Technology is a diverse field. You can start just about anywhere and end up in a similar position as those who've been building software since the beginning of time. Today, I'm Aaron Anderson, co-hosting with our very own Megan. Oh, she's on this side, I believe. Megan Daminger. And I'll pass it over to you, my co-host.
All right. So welcome, everybody. Today, we are going to be speaking with our guest, Emily EJ Ballie, who has a really interesting story to share with us about her own personal journey into the technology space. So before we get started, Emily, if you could just go ahead and give us a little bit of background about yourself, that would be great.
Yes. So thank you for inviting me to this session tonight. And I'm a technical project manager, and I have a lot of experience in different business operations and efficiencies across different tech stacks, and then also working with different industries as well through my time with Revature. And I love tea. I love to volunteer, and I love to travel. Those are like the three things about me that I like to bring into my everyday management style, mainly by always drinking tea, talking about my crazy stories, volunteering, and then also how those imparted and taught me some things when it comes to the work that I do with Revature.
Cool. Very cool.
That's awesome.
All right. So let's go ahead and kick off, Emily. I wanted to start off by asking, maybe going back, if you can, to your college days. So where did you go to college? And if you could walk us through, like, at that time in your life, what you chose to study while you were in college.
Absolutely. So a lot of people ask me, how did you get to where you are now when you started off and you wanted to basically help get transplanted kidneys around the world? So I went into college thinking I am going to get a double major in international business and biology. Originally, at the time, it was biomedical sciences, and then I was going to go and get a medical degree in specifically nephrology so that I could study kidneys. And you might be thinking, wait, why international business? And so something I mentioned earlier is I really like to travel. And so even at that time, I was like, okay, let me do something I'm passionate about. I love technology for sure, and I'll get to that, but I also love science. And so let me go down this path of becoming a medical doctor, and then also marrying it with the fact that I can travel the world, because kidneys are the most donated organ in the world. So this was my bright eye plan. And I did these majors. I learned a lot. I studied Mandarin. I also studied abroad in different countries and learned a lot of different things that were great. And then around my last couple of years in college, I was working on my minor, which was information systems management. And I was like, oh no, because yes, I love science, and yes, I love traveling, but wow, I'm really good at computers. And what we were doing was doing database administration and design. We were doing different types of queries and building reports in different systems, ERDs, these things that I use and had to use when I joined Revature. And ultimately, what it came down to was a moment of like, wow, I really enjoy this. I just wasted 2 to 3 years on two completely different things. And I say that I wasted it, but to be honest, I didn't. All those experiences that I had and gained from those two different degrees really helped basically build me out to who I am today, and then get me to where I am with being a technical project manager. And so that's kind of how I got through college. And then I discovered that I was really good at working with computers. And then I left and was like, okay, what am I going to do? So I did voter services with my local county, and I worked actually with their technology when it comes to voting. So anytime that anybody has gone to vote, any of those machines that you worked on, I worked on those machines. I helped set them up. I helped any troubleshooting that had to occur on election day. And then I also was like, wait, what am I going to do after this? Am I going to go into technology? And ultimately I did. But what happened was I made a decision that I was either going to go into the military, the Peace Corps, or the Revature, because my friend sent me an email saying, hey, there's a coding boot camp. I think you might enjoy this. And it's out of the college that you went to. Maybe you should do this. And I applied to all three of them. The military, I was intending to go into something that was STEM related. The Peace Corps, I love volunteering. I was figuring, yeah, well, I'll get experience there and I can, continue and travel. And then for Revature, I was like, yes, this is kind of a way to pivot and to learn something that I didn't get a chance to while I was in university. And ultimately, around that time, the government shut down and Revature got back to me first. And so that's how I kind of jump-started my career in software development, is that I learned all of these additional things that I hadn't when I was in college with my minor with Revature. So they helped me build the foundational knowledge I needed for Java full stack development. And then from there, I got hired in as a staging manager and then transitioned later on into a training manager with the team. So that's kind of like the how I got there extended.
I love it. I love it. First off, what's an ERD? You mentioned that. I'm like, wait,
entity relationship diagram. So those are really important when you're building out large databases, or if you're building objects in object-oriented programming, you need to kind of know how you're going to tie your objects to the tables and everything where you're going to store your data. So that's what an ERD is. So you have different charts in different relationships that you'd have. So many-to-many relationships or one-to-many relationships with different objects or tables.
All right, cool.
Very cool.
Yeah, I mean, what were you planning to pursue after college originally, other than those three options? Like when you were doing, your mission, or go ahead.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I was going to become a doctor in nephrology and basically help work on kidney transplants. So around the world. So the logistics of kidney transplants, the traveling, the donor lists, things like that.
It's awesome.
Very cool.
Yeah. Different. I could wax on about transplants in general. There's a lot to be said about that, but yeah, that was my origin, was wanting to go into transplants.
So you touched a little bit upon, what it was that kind of first drew you into technology by like, one of the classes that you were in, and how you realized that you were just really, really good at this and it kind of came naturally to you. Is there anything else that maybe was in your life that helped you develop an interest in technology?
Yeah, I had been thinking about that actually. And I'd probably say is that when it came to my household, I'm a middle child. And so I always got the hand-me-downs. And so anything that was sort of broken or it was like misused was given to me and I have to fix it, right? So my phones were usually battered and bashed and I would replace the screens, or if there was some sort of reason that something wasn't working on the computer, I would be the person that my family would call in. And so that was around the time that I realized I love problem solving. And one of the things that technology offers is a lot of problem solving. And there's different types of problem solving that you can do with it, whether that be going through a code base and identifying what's not working, or identifying maybe ways to optimize your code base. So those are different types of problem solving, one to make it better and one to make it work. And for me, I love doing different aspects of problem solving. And so I found that technology was a good way to do that. And ultimately, I don't work with technology as much, but I do still enjoy learning about it and working with my team members that have learn new technologies, and then how that can be applied into different tasks, or maybe we can explore different avenues of how those technologies can be integrated with something that we already have created. And I'm now problem solving from a management side versus from the technical side, but I've kind of married them together is the main thing. But yeah.
Wonderful.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. I should have got more hand-me-downs so I can be more. That's all right. So we know, you're manager here at Revature right now, and you began your journey through our training program itself. Can you tell us a little bit more about that experience? What was the moment that was like, okay, and we know you had a few other options, but what was the moment that you were like, what, Revature is going to be it? And then what was that experience like through training?
Yeah. So Revature was going to be it because what I did was their Spark program. So that was where you had to do self-study for a couple of weeks prior to joining into one of their full stack Java trainings. And so from that side of things, I studied on my own and got to learn. I learned JavaScript, HTML, and CSS, like the bare basics that you need for web development. And really that was a lot of fun. And at the time I was actually doing with one of my friends, and I was like, oh, we can do this together. We can go through Revature together. Ultimately, when we went through the program, she quit the first day. But when I was doing it with her, I got a great appreciation for problem solving with other people, because that's the one thing that I think development work really can be good about, is that you are sharing ideas, and that the problems that you're solving are not things that are unique. They've been seen before, and maybe there's others that have seen them, or you just need a new set of eyes. And so I really learned that when I was working with her. And then when I went through the program, what I learned is that you build a team, the group of people that you're training with, you all have to lean on each other in different things, because some people are quicker to learning certain technologies than others. So Angular, which is a front-end web development tool framework, essentially that has a barrier to entry, in the sense that you have to learn a lot more, or some people take a lot longer to learn it. And so some people in my cohort were good. They could create like all sorts of things within Angular, and others were just like, put me in the back end. I will work all day, every day in the back end. I can't stand front end work. And it was the understanding that there's different people that work on different things and understand it differently. And some people, when they come together, you can create an application together. And so that really was something that really drew me to web development overall, or sorry, software development, not web development, because web development can be thought of as, JavaScript, HTML, CSS. But overall, I think that, yeah, I enjoyed the camaraderie that you build with other people. And also when you run into a problem within your code base, and it might take you 30 to 45 minutes to actually determine what the problem is, and you find out it was just some syntax error, and you're just like, wow, like you're like, wow, I'm a clown, I'm a complete clown. But at the same time, you're relieved that you've got the now code working, but it was a small minor error. And so like these are successes that you can get here and there. And then when you actually have it run, like your full program run and deploy, you're just like, wow, we did this together as a team. And like, yes, your part might be a small piece, but it comes together as a whole. So that's kind of what I enjoyed about the Revature training. But to answer your question a little bit more fully, what I learned and my biggest takeaway when I ended up going from the software development side of things and then being brought into the company is I took away my name. So my name is Emily Baillie, but I go by EJ. And because at that time, when I was going through my training for Java full stack development, my trainer was Emily. And when I joined the company, I was also an Emily. So we ended up deciding that, well, I'm going to be called Emily Jr. So that's where my name EJ comes from. And that was given to me by one of my first managers, that was Julie Seals. And so that was my kind of history behind that, and what is now a legacy that I've been curating within Revature.
I love that story.
Yeah. I'm waiting for an AJ now, or MJ.
Oh yeah,
Megan, where's your MJ?
That's good.
EJ, I want to ask you, you mentioned at the beginning of your story that, you made it through the training, obviously, right? But that, your friend kind of didn't make it after day one. What advice would you give to someone just maybe attempting to go through the training program, as it's, it's pretty an intense training?
Yeah. So first off, I would say it's not a scam. I think that's the first thing that people think about when they think about Revature. Is like, I think it's a scam. I think it's a scam. And I get it, but it's not a scam. And the other thing I'd say is that it's changed tremendously. So I think one of the things that Revature is always kind of chasing is our past and everything. But we've learned from that. We've learned from our past and have made the training a lot better. And we try to make sure that we are providing good content. And then also, I think the trainers themselves speak for their ability to actually convey all of these ideas in a really digestible manner. And I've met some great people through the training, and I have great trainers on my team and on the other teams, and I think they're great. And I think that anybody that goes into the training with them will learn a lot of information. And so the main thing I would say though is to be adaptable. Make sure that you study if you're going into it. That's a big one. Rely on the people around you. Also rely on yourself. Like there are ways to rubber duck. I think that's the biggest thing that we always talk about is, if you have a question, you run into a problem, ask yourself that first. And sometimes it's easier to ask a duck, like a rubber duck first, that information, then go to your peers, then go to your trainer, things like that. And also like people often don't realize what other resources they have around them, because there's different like communities that you can join, or even in meetups. There's a lot of technical meetups too, and I always highly recommend people joining technical meetups if they haven't yet kind of gone into this world, so that they can see what other opportunities are out there. Because I say software developer, but software developer is one kind of title that you can use, but there's so much more within the industry that is available for others to actually work in. So yeah, that's what I would say. Adaptability, probably have a smile on your face when you can. And then also make sure you have a group of friends that you can also complain with. And then also make sure that you learn from those complaints and be like, okay, I can do this better next time. Things like that.
Yeah, I love that. You also touched on relying on one another and also yourself. So
Yeah,
sounds like you're really kind of, honing in on all of that altogether. Yeah, that's great. Thank you.
absolutely.
After training, we really appreciate the advice that you shared for those and highlighting the aspects of being flexible, adaptable, and willing to learn. So, you spent time in our staging department as well, managing activities there. What would you say is something significant and impactful that you would want to pass on to others?
It's actually somewhat of the same thing, staging. And I know for a lot of people out there and a lot of people I've connected with over the years as well that have gone through staging, it was challenging. And the reason I say challenging is because you've secured an interview, you've passed your interview, and now you're waiting to onboard with the client. And so around that time when I was in staging, I was helping with the different staging activities, things that keep people involved within the technology that they're working on, and also working on projects. And biggest one would be, again, adaptability, being able to pivot, but also to learn and to be okay with a little bit of uncertainty. I think that was one of the things that we saw a lot. My time within staging as a staging manager, we also had COVID-19. So like 2020 was a strange year for everyone. So it was also a learning mechanism, because we changed from being in person to fully remote. And so how does that change the dynamic of seeing a person every single day, and what work can they do when it's remote? And so that was a very interesting period of time, because we had to find ways to keep people engaged and involved that we didn't have in person before. Because in person, I could sit everybody in a room and we'd have one-on-one sessions and then talk. I also could, get a feel for how people are working together, or because somebody's really close by, I can see that they're working on X, Y, and Z, and this other person across the room is having problems with X and Y. So come over here, and then maybe you can help them with their Z. And so that was kind of things that I saw within staging. But yeah, overall, I would say, yeah, being adaptable is usually the best one, and staying optimistic is probably the second best thing to advice to give from that my time within staging.
Why optimistic? I wanted to double click on that a little bit.
So optimistic because there's a lot of uncertainty, and this is something actually I don't think is singular to Revature, or I think it's something that you see with a lot of companies. Not every company has their I'm going to tread on this a little bit lightly. So not everybody has their onboarding processes outlined in a very defined way. Sometimes you're waiting on one person to tell you what's going on, and that one person has got 5 to 10 other tasks that they're doing, so you're lower on the rung. And a lot of the time that we have a lot of people that go through staging, or not just staging, but go through Revature, it's their first job. So they might not have seen kind of the dynamics. I've worked in a lot of different odd jobs here and there, and it's different each time. Your onboarding process is going to be different. And so the reason why you need to be optimistic is be optimistic that today is the day that your manager is going to reach out to you and give you the information that you've requested. But the other thing, and I guess I'll say that there's a third one. So you want to be adaptable, optimistic. And the third is that you sometimes want to be a dog after a bone. Like you need to follow up. You need to follow up. And so that's something that you learn through a business career at all, or just like when you're going to any job, you have to follow up with your managers if they haven't like talked to you, and you have to have that kind of confidence to, you sent one email, you can send a third email, you know what, it's fine. Like I think there is a saying that is, you ask a question once and you're a fool for 5 minutes, but if you never ask a question, you're a fool for the rest of your life. And so that's something to keep in mind when it comes to like following up and everything. So no question is a bad question, unless the question is, what is the best hockey team? Then there is a wrong answer to that.
Can you kind of walk us through what you did during this time in relation to any tech, or if you just kind of took time to do maybe some other things that you were interested in along your career journey?
Yeah, absolutely. So I took a sabbatical. Essentially, I was finding that I had outgrown kind of the position, and then also I wanted to sit back. I had a loss in my family, and I decided to travel more. As I mentioned before, I like to travel a lot. So I traveled to a lot of different places, and then I also did a lot of volunteering. So one of the things that I found is, and what I recommend everyone do, is make sure you have a work-life balance that can help facilitate things you enjoy. And I did volunteer while I was throughout my actual career, but then not being able to find a way to volunteer effectively, I think, is ultimately what came down to, especially COVID. I mean, like, changed everything. I used to volunteer with at the local shelter with both cats and dogs, and I wasn't able to do that anymore because, COVID, you can only, certain people could go in. So what I did was I joined a bunch of different organizations, and then I also, during the sabbatical, first joined the Red Cross. And the Red Cross taught me a lot of different things. The big one was that there's a quote that they have. It's for the disaster action team members. So I'll take a step back. I joined the Red Cross as a disaster action team member, specifically as a duty officer. So what I did and still do is I take phone calls for anyone that has had a disaster in the area of Central Florida. So whether that be a fire, predominantly it's fires, like a lot of fires, whether it's a boat fire, like it's your houseboat and it's on fire, whether it's a mobile home, even if you're homeless and it's a tent and you lose all of your belongings, that is considered a disaster, and we can come and assist in different ways. And so what I learned was to make sure that anything you do is consistent, repeatable, and scalable. And that's something that we think about when we're talking about disaster responses. And that kind of is something that I think also folds into technology as well, because you want to create things that are scalable, that you can actually repeat and also are consistent, and that, like, the actual technology continues working. You're not going to have, a 404 error all the time. So things like that are important. The other thing that I found when I was out there was I wanted to start my own kind of volunteering technology company. And so I started working on an idea that I call Volunteer Solutions. And it's basically providing volunteer help technical help to volunteering organizations, because a lot of volunteering organizations don't have a lot of money, don't have a lot of knowledge in the technical front, and it's hard to find. So what I want to do was create a nonprofit that would focus on that. So what are these different softwares that are available to you as a nonprofit that you can use for your company? So Salesforce, a major CRM, they offer a nonprofit suite that you can get as long as you're a 501(c)(3). Similarly, if you're with Canva is for marketing tools and everything. If you are a 501(c), you'll get a free Canva account because it's part of their corporate social responsibility movement, basically, to make sure that they can help others. And so those are things where I have gathered this knowledge with within both technology and volunteering that I would like to see help other people. So that's kind of some of the things that I did. So volunteering, I did a lot of volunteering is ultimately what it came down to, and traveling. And then I came back out of my sabbatical, and one of my previous mentors, well, Sean, and who's, I guess, still sort of a mentor as well today, he called me back, and I was like, okay, yeah, I'll come back. So I was like, yeah, I would enjoy being a manager. Thank you.
Yeah, I love that. And it all kind of ties into that, what you learned and what you highlighted, which is that consistent, repeatable, and scalable. I'm sure that you utilize that constantly as a manager.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Hopefully that's the thing that we're working towards, right?
Absolutely.
That's awesome. I mean, I'm sure you have so many wonderful experiences through volunteering. Like, why do you continue to do it?
To be honest, I think it's because I did it when I was like my family did it. Like my mom and my grandma. My grandmother was a nurse. She was kind of the reason why I went down that kind of path in the beginning of kidney transplants. But she I would go to the hospital and I would volunteer with her. My mom worked for Disney, so Disney has volunteers. And so I'd always go and help, clean up the beaches. I did a Take Your Child to Work Day where I just like helped work in, well, that's, I don't think volunteering, but I worked there and everything. And then a lot of different other activities. Plus I always felt like I had a lot of opportunity and I wanted to give back in ways that I could. And also, if you don't have money, the thing that you can always provide is your time. And then over time, you start realizing that your time is money. So it becomes this balancing act again. And so what I found is that I enjoy it. I meet a lot of interesting people. I learn a lot of different things. I've done a lot of strange volunteering. I volunteered for the Florida State Fair. And when I did that, I worked for the 4-H portion. All the proceeds that I basically selling strawberry shortcakes, and all the proceeds went to the 4-H program. That was, I always forget what the 4-H's stand for. But anyhow, it's for horticulture. I feel like maybe what has one of them. I know Heart and Home is another. Anyhow, if you aren't familiar with 4-H, just Google it and it's out there. But I learned how to make these amazing, probably not super expensive strawberry shortcakes. So I did that. I worked at the Museum of Science and Industry. I volunteered in their butterfly garden. So I saw how you actually work with butterflies, and we had to move the butterflies in their little cocoons. We had to like set up all the different plants, and then I weeded gardens. I volunteered for this was in high school. I did a lot of volunteering with the One Blood, which is now one of the largest blood banks that's across the United States, out of Florida, and just getting people to donate blood and the reason why you should donate blood. And then, yeah, so I just did a lot of it. And I've met so many cool people, and learned so many things. But yeah.
Yeah, you have a variety of volunteer activities. Those are awesome. And kind of shows like the power of giving back, right? You also receive a lot too when you engage in things like that, right? You made new friends and learned a lot. So awesome reminder of a good way to use all of our time.
Yeah, for sure.
All right. So we want to talk about what kind of brought you back, right? You highlighted a little bit about how, a mentor kind of reached out to you. Is there any more to that story about sort of what pulled you back in our direction and what let us have your wonderful presence again?
Yeah, sure. This is gonna be interesting because I don't think I've ever told Sean that he was technically like he hopefully he knows that I see him as a mentor in ways, but basically when he joined the company, and he joined the company after I had joined and everything later on, he had a one-on-one with every single team member, and we had really good conversations, and like I learned a lot from him. And then he continued to have meetings with me, even though he wasn't my direct manager or my direct manager's manager at the time. And so he always had a pulse for things. And so we would just talk about ways to make the processes better, ways to basically have an open forum with him so that he can guide me in different things, and also where I can guide him from my little area that I was in at the time. And so when I left, whenever you leave places, you should always leave the door open, mainly because you never know. You never know. And also I had goodwill for Revature overall. And I think that has a great amount to grow and everything. And so when I came out of my sabbatical, I basically took a year and was like, you know what? I'm gonna start looking for a job again. I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna go out. And he had seen something I posted because I'd mentioned that I joined a bunch of different organizations. And when I first joined the company, I joined the International Institute of Business Analysts, and then also a PMI chapter in my area for project management. And that was back in when I lived in Texas. And I was posting through those 501(c)(3)s. Technically, IIB is not a nonprofit, but it's a nonprofit but for business. So anyway, all that being said, I posted something up and Sean saw it and then was like, "Hey, have you found a job yet?" And I was like, "No, I'm just starting. I'm just starting. This is wild and everything." And so he's like, "Well, I have an opportunity for you." And I was like, "Okay." And so I had great respect for Sean, and I asked him some pretty big questions, like the concerns I had in the past do you see them being resolved? And he did. And then I got to meet a couple of other people that were brought on into the company at the time, and they really sold me on the fact that, well, they're seeing a path forward and they're trying to make that path that they had envisioned come to light. And so I went back into the company, and I think that mentorship overall is really important within any career. Doesn't matter if it's technical or not. And one of the things that I volunteer with right now is Women in Technology, specifically for the mentor protege programs, both for girls in technology and women in technology. And the thought behind that is being able to access mentors, because I'll be honest, like I say, Sean is one of my mentors. I never had other mentors, not really. People that can basically give you constructive criticism, but also to make you think a little bit beyond the scope of what your role is right now. It's something you're going to want to try. And the thing is that you also want different mentors, I think, too, because different mentors give you different perspectives and experiences. So also something you can find while volunteering, because I have a couple of volunteering mentors, I will say, that I found. But yeah.
Oh, that's awesome. Great advice. Great advice,
Absolutely.
Right? Have a variety of mentors as you develop in your career, but you segued perfectly into our next question. So Aaron, I'll let you go ahead and take it.
Yeah, let me take this. I'm like, it's like perfect. So as a woman in technology, I'm not a woman, I'm a man, but I must know, because the advice I'm sure applies to everybody. What advice would you give to other women who are thinking of breaking into tech or who have just begun their journey?
If they've just begun their journey, I'd say you're not alone. There's a lot of that. The experiences that you have are not singular as well, because there's some people that feel like, because nobody's talking about things that have happened, that it can't be happening in their workplace or things like that. And what I say is mainly like if you're not being asked questions in a meeting and it's something routine, but it's because are you being overlooked, or is it maybe there's just a lot of different things. So I don't think you're not alone. There's other people in this, and there's a community out there that you can join and grow with too within that. And then I'd say, I mean, anything you put your mind to, you can do it. And if you can't do it where you're at, specifically in whatever company, carve your way out and do something different, or make it for others. At least that's what my mentality is that, well, if I'm being told I can't do it here, I'm going to try to do my best to do it somewhere else, or build it, right? So I guess one, you're not alone, and then the other would be is that it's not impossible. Like for me, the reason I didn't go into computer science is just I didn't know that I could. Like not that I could, but it wasn't really an option. Like in the sense of, we had physics, and this is from like schools. Like we're limited by the environment that we grew up in, or studying in, because it was, or what was around at the time. And I think there was definitely engineering. Like I think there was engineering paths, but that never was something I was like, oh man, it's heavy math. You're just gonna have to learn all the math. And you don't have to know all of that much math to be a software developer and everything. So that was something I was like, oh, this is great. The math's already been discovered. I don't have to create, like whatever postulates are, because I'm going to say that and I have no idea what a postulate is, but I'm assuming that it's something that's related to what you need to know to like create different, like I don't have the knowledge of how to create an algorithm, like seeing a complex mathematical problem and trying to come up with a new solution. That's not really like, I think there's a lot of building blocks within technology that already exist. You just need to understand how they work, not how to make them yourself. I think that sort of answered your question.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
Getting a little bit away from me, but yeah, that you're not alone. That also know that you can just do it. Just try it. Just try it. You never know.
Yeah. Go for it. Right. Love it.
Absolutely.
Love that mentality. All right. So this is one of my favorite questions. Who for you, EJ, has been one of your biggest inspirations or support for you in your life?
In my life. Okay. I feel like I have to say all of my family, because otherwise they're just gonna be like, what were you thinking? But no, I think more realistically, I think it's been a culmination of different people and just ideas that I've grown up with. Even books sometimes are good. Like you read a good book and you're just like, man, I would like to be like this character. Or you take facets of things that you've found. One of the early people that I saw run an organization well and with good discipline was a woman. I looked her up, her last name, because I didn't remember her last name, but her name was Rosa Cruz when I worked for the supervisor of elections. And she was the first person that I saw that was a good manager, like a really good manager. And she managed the whole voter services section, so maybe like 20 plus people at the time, and then it became more than that, over 100 plus when an actual election was going on. And she was really good at delegating. She was really good at giving praise when it was needed, and then also giving conservative criticism. And so she was one person that at a time I looked up to, and I still think about her every now and then. I'm like, wow, she did a good job, and I'm glad that I got to see her. The other would be my late stepmom. She was the one that really taught me the most. And I'd say that because she was a manager, and she was a manager for a company that was from the UK. And so she dealt with there's a lot of different cultural things that you get. I mean, you wouldn't think that there's a lot, and there really isn't, but there are different things that are culturally different between the US and the UK. And she just would be my sounding board, the person that would be like, hey, how do I do this? And she'd always be like, Emily, you get more flies with honey than with vinegar. I think that's always like a big takeaway too. And so it's like, okay, I can't be as hard, or like, because sometimes I like to be more like, we can just do this and we'll just have to blow everybody out of the water and just do all this stuff. And then, no, we have to be a little bit nicer, bring everybody in. We want their thoughts and opinions, and then come with a good idea and everything. So she was one of them as well. And then I don't think of anybody else. I mean, there's a lot of different people that I've over time. I think I also like quotes. Like I try to live my life by two specific quotes. One is by Mark Twain, which is "Let us so live that when we come to die, even the undertaker will be sorry." And then the other is "Ad astra per aspera," which is "to the stars through hardship." And just like the idea is that if you work hard enough, you're going to be like Hercules in the Disney Hercules film, and you have a constellation and everything. But yeah, so those are basically, maybe those are role models. Those are quotes that I live by, but that's how I'm pivoting for that question.
Yeah, but it makes sense, right? Those quotes inspire you, so fair enough.
There you go, inspiration.
I love it. I'm a Disney kid at heart.
Right? Yeah.
I think one of the final questions we'll be asking, there may be more, you never know. In your free time, what are some of your passion projects or hobbies? Just, quick little list.
Okay, quick little list. Everything. There you go. I think that I dabbled in I was trying to get a skydiving certification at one point. I wanted to see from a different perspective, like a very different perspective. I might go back to skydiving at some point. I like gardening. I like to cultivate different types of vegetables, and I used to be a part of the African Violet Society for a brief period of time. Yeah, different places have different African Violet Societies. It's a byproduct of when you volunteer for a for a state fair. I will say that. And I also like to cook a lot. Oh, do you have a question?
What does the African Violet Society do?
Okay, so the African Violet Society is a society of people that are growing African violets, and African violets have many variations and varieties, and a lot of people are trying to make like basically like if you take two different types and then you kind of bring them together so that you can have different colored blooms. So African violets, they have different blooms, and so they're indoor plants. So I recommend them to other people. If you're ever watering them, you do not water them directly because their leaves are hydrophobic. They don't like want water, so you don't want to put water on them. And the plants although have different like shades of leaves and blooms, so you can get different varieties, and people come together, they talk about the different plants that they have, they trade plants, they go to different trade shows or state fairs and sell their African violets. So yeah, that's the one thing that one path I went down once upon a time. But I also like cooking as well. I love it. Any type of food. I will go to cooking classes any day. I will eat people's terrible food just so I can understand it a little bit better. What went wrong? I don't know. Maybe that they started cooking to begin with, but you don't say that to somebody's face. But anyway.
What's your best dish?
My best dish is probably chicken pot pie. I say chicken pot pie, but I also make a really good dumpling now too, like an actual like pork and chive dumpling. I've kind of like perfected that. It's taken some time. And a lot of different curves. But yeah.
Wow. If you ever need taste testers, you can give us a
Yeah,
call.
absolutely.
I think we both
Have
volunteer.
a party. Absolutely. I would love cooking. I had birria today that I made. So if you guys have ever had birria, it's great. And
Wow.
yeah, but I used beef. That's what I used for mine. Just get
Awesome.
sometimes I think
Sounds
it's
delicious.
yeah.
Making us hungry. Well, me.
Yeah.
I'm always hungry.
Well, I think that brings us to time, Emily.
Woohoo.
Thank you so much. We learned
Absolutely.
a lot about your journey, and thank you so much for taking the time to share it with us. Is really interesting to learn how you started in biomedicine and navigated into technology and all the things in between. We obviously know you'll continue to do amazing things here and beyond. But just really want to thank you again for your time and for being willing to share your story with us and other individuals.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
All right.
you.